20 recommendations have been put forth by the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee, established by President Bola Tinubu to evaluate and provide guidance on reforms aimed at shaping Nigeria's fiscal policy and tax system. The recommendations, known as Quick Wins Report, covered key economic matters such as foreign exchange management, multiplicity of taxes and efficiency of collection, quality of spending, stimulation of local production, facilitation of economic growth, and more. The committee's work is divided into 3 phases, with the next 2 phases, the critical reforms and implementation stages, built to be executed within 6 months and a year. Taiwo Oyedele, chairman of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee, joins me now. Good to have you join me today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on your program.
All right. Well, we've been talking about tax reform before your appointment into this committee. And one of the things you've always talked about is how cumbersome tax collection is across the country. Now, talk to us about how many taxes you found, and talk to us if you found anything that even surprised you while trying to clean up that space.
Yeah, thank you once again. So the work of my committee has only just started. We are into the 2nd month, literally. We still have about 10 months to go. So which means in the past 60 days or thereabouts, we have focused more on things where we do not need to do a lot of stakeholder engagement. But other than using data and existing information, where broad stakeholder groups have already agreed, we have consensus, and issues that we need to undertake now to be able to respond to our most pressing economic needs, like foreign exchange management, price stability, generating employment, and so on and so forth. So in terms of multiplicity of taxes, we haven't done any additional work than what has been done previously, which is that we have a list of approved levies and taxes collectible by local government, state governments, and the federal government. And that adds up to over 60 different taxes and levies. But we know that unofficially, the number of taxes are a lot more, easily over 200. So what we are doing at this phase, which is quick wins, is to identify some of those taxes that particularly impact on price stability, like haulage. So you are moving produce from one location to another location, and you have to sometimes pay as much as 60, 70 different levies and taxes at different points. I just listened to a video this morning of a transporter that was interviewed, and the person said to move truck from one location in Nigeria to another, they pay over 450,000 naira on one truckload. In addition to the fact that diesel price is expensive. So at the end of the day, when those things arrive at their destination, the price has to go up because those people need to recover their costs. So those kind of costs, including shop and kiosk, business registration, are the ones we've identified, and we're encouraging the subnational in particular who collect these taxes to suspend those taxes, pending when we do a more holistic reform, which may even require that we go into the Constitution to clarify the taxing rights and the number of taxes that can be imposed by different levels of government. So at the moment, we're hoping that we'll be able to strike a deal in the form of a memorandum of understanding for those taxes to be suspended so people can get the immediate relief while we work on a more sustainable long-term measure to address the problem once and for all.
All right, you talked about suspending some of these taxes. First, I want to know if you've gotten the commitment of these subnationals to, probably suspend these taxes. And also, I'm curious to know if all these monies actually get to the government. You talked about a truck driver who probably has to part with 450,000 naira. I'm wondering how many trucks we have on our roads and how much of that is gotten from other truck drivers. And I'm asking, do these monies actually get to these subnationals? Do they get to the government? Do they get to the local government? Are they being utilized? Do we see them? Are they even quoted when we're talking about the internally generated revenue from these places?
Unfortunately, we do not have any records to show that most of those revenues actually get to the government because the numbers are not reflecting them. So there's only one conclusion, and that conclusion is that the monies are not being reported, or sometimes they're actually being collected by non-state actors. And even when they are collected on behalf of the government, they're not properly accounted for, partly because of the way and manner in which those taxes are collected. So if you are collecting taxes in cash, chances are that a lot of it will disappear before it gets to its final destination, which is treasury. The world we live in today makes it extremely easy for people to pay electronically using multi-channels, including USSD, payment cards, mobile transfers. So what we are hoping will happen very soon is that we clean up that whole process. I think that enterprises, businesses, and individuals need to pay such that the transporter, if they need to pay anything at all, maybe just one tax. And then when that tax is paid, it's paid electronically and they get a receipt on their mobile phone. And even when they lose that message, they can retrieve it by dialing star something hash. And therefore, whatever we agree that they should pay is paid only once and it gets to the government so it can be used for the benefit of the people. Unfortunately, that's not where we are now, and we think that that problem can be addressed. We do not have express agreements with the subnationals as of yet. We discussed our proposals with them during the last National Economic Council meeting, and they were very receptive. So from the initial interactions with them, we would say the response was positive. But we need to then follow that up with a memorandum of understanding that they would sign so we can hold them to it. So that is the stage where we're at now. And again, we're still optimistic and hopeful that this will be able to go through successfully.
I'd like to get a timeline. Is there a timeline to get that, commitment from the subnationals? So you have the memorandum of understanding signed, and then Nigerians can then expect to see these things being rolled out.
Well, it's very difficult to put a timeline to something like this because part of it also is that we have an emergency economic intervention bill because one part of this intervention requires a memorandum of understanding. Another part of it requires that you amend the law. Because what we are trying to do is find, are there instances or areas, particularly relating to fuel subsidy removal, where we have agencies now collecting extra revenue that they were not collecting before. Whether we could use those extra revenue to compensate the local governments and the states, mostly local governments, for the taxes we're asking them to suspend. So which means on one hand, we need to amend the law to find the revenue. On the other hand, we need to sign the MOUs for us to now implement. We're putting our effort into all of this. We already have a draft bill. We're working on the MOU, but I can't give you an indication of specifically when this will be completed because, of course, it's totally not within our control.
Right. I like how that you've talked about some legal implications and all of that. And then your committee recommended that, these taxes, these multiple taxes be whittled down to about 10. Now, I want to ask, how did, 10 become the magic number, and what legal and tax policies, would need to be changed for this to happen?
Yeah, 10 became the magic number because of what the data is telling us. So we look at the data today and we realize that over 95, 96% of the taxes collected across local governments, all 774, states, all 36, and the Federal Capital Territory, and the federal government, including collection from Nigerian Customs Service, are coming from less than 10 taxes. So the question is, if you already today have the bulk of your revenue coming from less than 10 taxes, why do you have over 60 officially and over 200 unofficially? So that's where the magic number came from. And working with a single digit for us is also an indication of clarity, simplicity, but more importantly, it puts a limit to how many taxes can be imposed going forward in the future, right? Because it doesn't matter any numbers you call. Somebody will ask you, why is he 10? Why is he 15? Why is he 20? It has to be something. And we just thought that a single digit is the best way to go. In fact, we're ambitious to even think that it should be less than 10, that maybe it should be less than 9. We know it has to be a single digit. Maybe it should be 6, maybe it should be 7, but not more than a single digit.
Well, I guess 10 is a good place to start from.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you made about 20 recommendations, your committee did, and we won't be able to get to all of them, but let's take some key points. One of the recommendations has actually generated some questions, and that's the foreign exchange transactions conducted outside Nigeria's official forex window should incur excise tax penalties. Now, for some industry players, I'm talking about financial market analysts, some of them are wondering how you want to track these transactions. And there are also those who are saying that it could be counterproductive, as they believe that apart from, widening the premium between the existing windows, we'll also see a pass-through to inflation, especially when supply is also an issue in the NAFEP window. And so the manufacturers who still end up going to this particular window will probably pass the cost to consumers, because maybe that tax is also going to increase some other things. So what do you make of these concerns? Or is it the case that they probably misunderstood your committee?
Yeah, so I think I should start by saying, foreign exchange management is entirely the responsibility of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Our intervention is more from the fiscal side, and also in terms of coordination between the fiscal authorities and the monetary authorities. You would recall that the Central Bank already removed the restriction on 43 items that were previously prohibited from accessing foreign exchange from the official market. In other words, what the central bank has done is they have moved legitimate demands into the official market. So what needs to happen next is that we need to move all legitimate participants into the official market. We do not want people who are looking for input for raw materials to go into the same market with speculators and people with illicit financial flows. Therefore, the plan is, if you think about it, it's not like there's someone who is printing dollars in the parallel market. So even if you don't have sufficient supply in the official market, why is it that the supply that is available is in the parallel market? Why is that supply not in the official market? So imagine that we can bring everything into the official market, where you have proper regulation for price determination. You ensure that people who are doing legitimate transactions are able to find the effects that they need, rather than competing with speculators and people with illicit funds. So that is the intention. And this means a holistic package of interventions, both monetary and fiscal, are the things we need to do. And that's what we're working on. Now, the whole idea of an excise tax is not to raise revenue, is not to increase the cost so that it will flow through inflation to the society. It is rather what we call a sin tax. Because if you're trying to discourage an activity, then you can impose a tax on it, whether it's legal or not. The law does not discriminate when it comes to taxation between legality and illegality. It's trying to drive certain kind of behaviors. So the excise tax we are planning to introduce is not an excise that will be 5 or 10% or 15%. It's an excise tax that will take the whole of the premium between the parallel market and the official market away from the seller and give that money to the government. So which means if you're going to lose the premium you're looking for in the parallel market, why don't you then just go to the official market? And your question about how we're going to track it, it's actually one of the easiest things to track, because on one hand, if you buy FX, the bulk of the FX is done through either cash or bank transfers. Even when they are done in cash, you find that somebody has to withdraw it. Again, they do not print naira, so they have to withdraw the money at some point. So those transactions can be tracked easily by the financial system. to know that someone is constantly crediting people with naira, or they're constantly withdrawing naira, and sometimes they'll bring dollars back. So those behaviors are easy to track. It's a concept of follow the money, and then you find where the things are. And we also, the central bank also will be thinking about digitizing that whole process of foreign exchange transaction, so that the less cash you have and the more electronic transactions you have, the easier it is also to track what's going on, not only because you want exchange rate stability, but also because for economic planning, and also ensuring that we are not providing the loophole for people to finance things like terrorism, which is not good for anyone.
Absolutely. You said a whole lot about what you want to do in this particular market. And while a lot of focus has been on the tax reforms, which is part of your work, it's important to also note that fiscal policy is also within your committee's purview. So from what you've said, I see you've recommended expanding the official foreign exchange markets to incorporate BDCs, Forex apps, and retail Forex dealers, as well as digitalizing Nigeria's Forex regime in a bid definitely to discourage speculative demands and hoarding of Forex in cash. And now I need you to talk to us about how this will work. And when you were talking about having everyone in the official markets, the first question that came to my mind was, what will be the incentive? What happens when supply is still an issue? What will make people, move their funds from the parallel market to the official market?
Yeah, like I said, today, whatever supplies we have in the parallel market, it's not that it was printed by anyone who is running away from the official market. So that supply, it's someone's, dollars, someone's pound sterling, and they have made the decision to sell it in the parallel market. So the question we're asking ourselves is, how can we ensure that we have one market? Because if you have two markets, and the two markets seem to be legitimate in terms of recognition and impact on the economy, it makes it even more difficult for you to manage your foreign exchange. So what we're saying is, those who have, and this is not about forcing anyone to sell at any particular price. Already the central bank had said that willing buyer, willing seller will prevail in the official market. So we're saying, don't sell it in the parallel market, sell it in the official market. Even these may not increase the liquidity, but it means that the liquidity that we have now that is going to the parallel market, why is it not coming to the official market? So this package of reforms are to ensure that we have one harmonized market, as has already been indicated by the central bank and the government of Nigeria. And this is what you find in many countries. You will not find, countries quoting different rates, and those rates are affecting their transactions and their economy. So many countries have black markets, right? And that's not the rate that is reported widely. So why is it that it's different in Nigeria? And that's what we're hoping that we can address. Now, once you're able to address that, then you're just moving the liquidity that you have now in the parallel market into the official market. You're not going to start manipulating the rate. You allow the rate to be determined based on established principles. Like the central bank has said that the rules will be communicated, the rules will be transparent, and they will be consistently applied. So which means that clarity of price determination, that clarity of what's going on for economic planning, and that clarity will also build confidence with the investment community, including foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment, and even diaspora remittances that is getting stuck in different places now being externalized will start flowing into Nigeria, as well as export proceeds from people who export products and services from Nigeria. So that means that in the medium to long term, you then begin to attract the liquidity that you need, and that will give you the exchange rate stability that we so desperately desire.
All right, so I remember when this committee was inaugurated, one of the things we heard was that you plan to increase Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio to 18%. Is that still on the table? I'm asking because of this, because within the recommendations, we see tax breaks, we see recommendations that probably seek to increase personal income tax exempt threshold and personal relief allowance. So talk to us, is that still on the table? And if it's still on the table, how do you hope to achieve that with these exemptions we're saying?
Yes, so that's still on the table. The plan we have has always been that we want to get to 18%, minimum of 18% tax to GDP ratio by 2026. So it's over the next 3 years. We are very clear that the measures and the policy reforms that are needed for us to get to that point cannot happen overnight. So this first phase of our work, which is the quick wins, is not targeted at increasing revenue because already Nigerians have made a lot of sacrifices from the first subsidy removal, from the exchange rate harmonization, impacting on the prices of goods and services, where many people are really struggling with more than 133 million people living in multidimensional poverty. So it is not the right time to start looking for how much more you can squeeze from the people. It's actually the time to provide some relief for them. While we then work on medium to long term, policy reforms, rewriting the law, amending the constitution, harmonizing the taxes, how the taxes are collected, using data for intelligence, leveraging technology for tax administration. All those others will happen subsequently in 2024, including a plan for us to implement a tax amnesty scheme. So the increase that we expect in terms of tax to GDP ratio would begin to happen from 2024. And then by 2026, we hope to then be able to be a minimum of 18% from where we are today, which is about 10.86% of tax to GDP ratio.
All right. Thank you so much, Taiwo Oyedele. I wish you could talk about this on and on and on, but we have to go now. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.